First question is, explain the phrase, as above, so below. So this is a paraphrase from a longer phrase from the document The Emerald Tablet. The longer phrase reads, that which is above is like to that which is below, and that which is below is like that to which is above. So if you go searching online, you'll find a range of different interpretations of this statement. So let's look at what a Vedic interpretation might be. What would the subject of Vedanta say about this phrase? One of the ways we can start to look at this is to look at the way that Vedanta describes experience, life. The cosmos itself comprises two aspects, macrocosm and microcosm. So what do these two words mean? The macrocosm refers to the large entity of which the microcosm is a part. The microcosm refers to the smaller entity which exists within the macrocosm. So the macrocosm is a whole, it's the totality, it's a more complex structure. The microcosm is a part of that. Importantly, the part is a representation of the whole. So that when you look at the microcosm, what you're seeing there is a representation of the macrocosm. So the universe is the macrocosm, the individual is the microcosm. The macrocosm is the object, the microcosm is the subject. This phrase, as above, so below. One of the ways we can think of it is to say that there are fundamental principles that govern the entire cosmos. That what happens in the microcosm is happening in the macrocosm. So that both are subject to these fundamental principles. One of the ways to understand this phenomenon is recognizing that the subtle controls the gross. So what do we mean by the word subtle? Subtle we define across two metrics. The first is pervasiveness. So the subtle exists wherever the gross does, and it exists beyond the gross. So an example of this is within the human personality, the intellect and the mind. Intellect is subtler than the mind. The mind comprises memory. The mind can only go to places that it has already been. It can only retrieve information that it has accumulated from past experience. That's the mind. Your dreams, for example, are returning to you a whole mixture of things from past experience. It's the realm of the mind. The intellect has the capacity to retrieve memory, to go into the past and exist there, but it can also go to where the mind cannot. It can project into the unknown, into the future. It can project conclusions that the mind did not know, that it was not aware of. So the intellect has this capacity to be wherever the mind is and beyond it. So the intellect is more subtle than the mind. Second metric that we look at when it comes to subtle and gross is control. Subtle controls the gross means that there is a one-way direction of causation. That if something happens in the subtle, it will flow through into the gross, but not the other way around. So the idea is like that of a seed. The seed is a cause. Where there is a seed, you get a grosser effect. And of course that all takes place in a conducive environment. So example here is that of the mind and the body. So for example, if you have an agitated mind, tense, stressed, unhappy, that will cause tension in the body. But it's not necessarily the case the other way around. You can hold the body in tension, but do it with a very peaceful mind. A simple example of this is your yoga practice. You may be holding the body in an incredibly tense state. It's perfectly still, but so is your mind. It's free from agitation. Just because there's tension in the body, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's tension in the mind. Now you might say, but when my body is uncomfortable, my mind becomes agitated. Isn't that causation? Simple answer here is no. What that is talking about is the mind's reaction to the body. So if the body is in tension, it's uncomfortable for reasons, perhaps over-exercising, you relate to that through your desires for comfort. And so the uncomfortable body becomes the conducive environment for your desire for comfort to be frustrated. So the cause of your mental frustration in that sense is not the tense body. Your cause for mental frustration there is your underlying desire to be comfortable. Body in this case is the conducive environment, not the cause. In just the same way that if you have soil, that's not going to give rise to an apple tree. What gives rise to the apple tree is the seed. That is the cause. But it may need that soil for it to express. So, pervasiveness and control. As above, so below. What does this mean? It means that there are fundamental laws that govern all of life. Above, the macrocosm, and below, the microcosm. The universe, the cosmos, and the individual. The world that we interact with, and you, me, the subject who is interacting with it. We are both subject to those fundamental principles. Spirituality is to search for and discover these principles. It means recognizing something that runs through the realm of macrocosm and microcosm both. When we understand these laws and integrate them, we live more wisely. We know how things work. As a consequence, we know what choices to make in order to achieve the results that we want. If we're ignorant of the laws that function, then we won't know how to act to achieve the life that we want.